All right. Happy Thursday morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. It is Thursday, April 21st. It is my mom's birthday today, which is a reason for celebration. Because without my mom, there is no me. There is
I
no.
really appreciate your mom for that.
I
Happy
I appreciate
birthday,
her.
Mom.
She did some good work, and she's lived a good life, a really good life, and she's got more to live. This isn't, but it's her birthday. It's a time for reflection.
It's not the end.
It's not the end. I certainly hope not. But we're here not just to celebrate my mom's birthday,
Mm-mm.
which I'm not going to tell you how old she is because I will just say it's a nice birthday. That's all I'm going to say.
You're a class
But
act, Brian.
I'm not going to tell you how old she is. Um, but we're also here to celebrate the return of a little band from Burlington, Vermont named Fish, who just made their debut in 2022 and in 4.0 at Madison Square Garden in Midtown Manhattan, a venue that is quite famous for a lot of reasons. Things like Marilyn Monroe singing Happy Birthday to the President, Franklin Delano Roosevelt accepting his nomination to become President of the United States in 1932, Billy Graham's 16-week residency in the mid 1970s. Not really something to be celebrated, but something notable. The New York Knicks losing really, really impactful and difficult games to the Chicago Bulls. Something definitely to be celebrated. The New York Rangers breaking the Stanley Cup drought in 1994. Just a lot of stuff. Other things that have happened at Madison Square Garden: Fish returned in 2.0, and Fish played the Baker's Dozen, and Fish played the MSG 2019 Tweezer. One of those three things, the last three things, one of those is the subject of season 3 of Undermine, launching a week from yesterday.
I wonder which one it is.
I do too. I have no idea. Someone needs to tell me because I make those shows. But we are not here to talk about all that. We're here to talk about the most insane New Year's Eve run in the middle of April 2022. Fish is back at the Garden. They played their first show last night of the 4-night run, their first 420 show of since 1994, which, to
Wow.
divert it back to my mother, I was talking to her this morning, wishing her a happy birthday, and she goes, "Brian, what does 420 mean?" And I said, "We need to have a conversation about this, Mom."
That's
Um,
cute.
it was very, very sweet. But it's a great day. We're in the middle of a fish run. Megan, I've been talking for 3 minutes and I haven't let you give us your first opinion, your first thoughts on all of this. How has your experience been in New York? You live in New York, so it's not like you're traveling there, but how was your experience at last night's show? What were your thoughts kind of overall? How are you feeling today?
I feel amazing. Last night was so fun. I am staying in the city for a few nights of this run because I didn't want to deal with like getting the kids to school this morning. So my husband's watching them for me. So I took the subway in from Brooklyn, just like I was just another tourist coming to New York, which was a real great, like kind of getaway vibe, even though I'm here where I live. And it was awesome. The vibe was great. The sun was shining. Everywhere you'd see people with their pins and their hats and their sweatshirts, and everybody was like giving everybody those, like, yep, knowing glances. I mean, I think to say anticipation was high would be a massive understatement. I mean, this is the first time that they've played the Garden in over 800 days. So people were very, very, very ready for these shows. So I think that the bar was pretty high. And I think the band also was excited to be back too. And the energy in that room, I was on the floor, which I just felt so grateful for. I love being on the floor at MSG. It's a special, special feeling. The last time I was there was 12/30/19, my last
Mm.
Fish show at MSG. And it was just, the vibe was off the charts. So yeah, I'm so excited to dig into the meat of the show. But my overall feeling is like all good vibes. And I'm so excited to do it again tonight. And tonight is the night before the night, which is always my favorite night.
Yeah, tonight is the 12:30, which we have talked about a lot in the last 6 months since we started potting regularly together. And I think we both look at this date and this day of the year as like it's a holy holiday, if you will, the night before the
Totally.
night type of vibes. And who knows what's going to happen? Because you got to imagine, you know, they got over the hurdle of plain MSG again. Like there was,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about this. We have a lot of guests today. We're going to jump into this here in a second, but like your comment about energy and emotion, like I felt that from 3,000 miles away, like sitting on my back porch watching it. I kind of felt like my heart was going to jump out of its
Yeah.
chest when they walked on stage and like they launched into Carini. And there was a
Oh,
moment where I was almost just like, they need to just take a deep breath and be like,
yeah.
hey, we're back. But they didn't do that. They just kind of kept going with the show, which was kind of crazy. And we'll talk about that. But yeah, tonight is this is the 12:30 show. So
This is it.
we're gonna jump into this conversation. We
Cool.
have Tim, Kevin, and Travis from Weekend Wook Plus joining us here today, which is awesome. And we also have another podcaster, Mr. Ryan Storm from We Move Through Stormy Weather, a number of projects as well. He does a bunch of goose stuff. He does a bunch of fish stuff. There's just I'm so stoked about this conversation because it's you, it's me, and it's other fish podcasters who do incredible work that we're going to be breaking down last night's show. This is going to be a ton of fun. Before we do that, though, we have just a tiny bit of business that we need to get to. I do want to encourage everyone out there who's listening, please subscribe to Osiris Media on Apple Podcasts for premium episodes from HFPod as well as Undermine. It's an excellent way to support independent podcasts. Plus, it gives us the chance to give you bonus content. The other thing we have to do is tell you just really quickly about our sponsors for today's episode. Megan, do you want to tell us about our first one?
I'd love to. It's our favorite Sunset Lake CBD. Sunset Lake CBD's line of smokable hemp products are for the old deadhead, Jonathan Hart, or the young fish fan like Ryan Storm. Anybody. Weekend Wook guys, they might like this too. Anybody searching for a mellow body high. Smoking CBD has all the benefits of high THC cannabis without the paranoid and anxious side effects. With 9 different strains from this year's harvest, there's something for everyone. The Hawaiian Haze is awesome for an outdoor show, and Cherry Abacus is best for the end of the night. All the flower is grown, cured, and trimmed by Sunset Lake CBD farmers. And even better, Sunset Lake CBD's farm-to-table approach gets you really great pricing on premium CBD flower because they ship directly from their farm to your door. And I have to tell you, oh no, Jonathan heard me. I love you, Jonathan. So I have to tell you, last night, I was really proud of myself. I was out super late. I went to the Osiris after party dab sessions. It was the best vibe, super mellow, super chill, but I was pretty amped up still from the show. And we got back to the hotel room at 3 a.m. And my girls and I, we were all like, let's get those Sunset Lake CBD gummies out. And we took them
There it is.
immediately. And it really helped us like ease into sleep and helped us sleep in a little bit later than we usually would because we're like moms, we get up early. So highly recommend the CBD gummies. So check them out today at sunsetlakecbd.com and use coupon code HFPod for 20% off all products. So that's Sunset Lake CBD, farmer owned, Vermont grown.
Beautiful. Really great stuff, Sunset Lake.
Mhm.
We love them here. I also want to tell you about the bar at Moynihan, which is located in the Moynihan Train Hall next to Madison Square Garden. We'd encourage you all to check them out for your pre and potentially post-show hub for fish at MSG. Really exciting news. There will be an Osiris meet and greet there today at 5:30 p.m. Eastern.
I'll be there.
Number of hosts. Megan will be there. RJ will be there. Brad will be there. Matt will be there. A ton of other people will be there hanging out, wanting to meet you fine listeners as well as just anyone casually interested in what we do and who wants to have a nice little pint before the show. Head over to the bar at Moynihan. Not only will the exclusive Sierra Nevada Foam Pilsner be available, but at a discounted price only at the new bar at Moynihan by the original Penzi team. Many MSG concert goers will remember them from the pre-COVID days. Excellent hang pre and post Baker's Dozen. So go in there to get a Sierra Nevada Foam Pilsner, but also to check out the team that's hanging out there. You can talk about Prime Fish headquarters for the week at MSG. The bar at Moynihan, it's a pint throw away from MSG. It's situated inside of the new Moynihan Train Hall. Hop off the Amtrak, Long Island Railway, or the subway to grab a few before and or potentially and or after the show. head on over to moynihanbar.com or follow them at the bar at Moynihan for more details. Great spot. Highly encourage everyone out there to check it out. We are going to bring in all of our excellent guests here right now. They've been hanging out backstage, getting ready for this. I would encourage all of you who are listening, who are hanging with us, share your thoughts about last night's show as we're talking through this. We're going to kind of break down the show from start to finish, give our thoughts, our opinions, and none of us are holding back. None of us are holding back, and we want to hear your thoughts too. We will share them as well. But let's go ahead here. We're going to bring on all of our guests right now. We have Mr. Tim Donahue reporting live from Central Park. How are you, Tim?
Loving this.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good,
Great.
good, man. The weekend work himself.
Reporting live from Central Park.
I mean, breaking news. This is awesome.
We also
I'm glad
have,
to be on. Thanks.
Thank you, man. We also have Mr. Kevin Hogan. Kevin,
Everyone.
how are you, my dude?
I'm fantastic. It's a little early, but that's okay.
It's a little early. It's show weekend. It's 11 or like it's 11 where I'm at. 1 p.m. is very early. I understand your feeling. If you recognize Kevin's voice, he hosted the excellent show on Osiris called Beautiful Garbage, one of my favorite shows that came out in the last year. I highly, highly recommend it. We also have Mr. Travis Strong. Travis, how are you, my dude?
I'm doing well, thank you. Too early, Kev. Are you kidding? This is beautiful being on the East Coast with the time. If I was home, it'd be 10 a.m. Now that's too early. I'm very glad that it's actually 1
Amateurs.
o'clock. This is great. Exactly.
Damn.
Glad to be here.
I love it. I love it. And we also have, I'm going to try to bring him on. For whatever reason, I'm having, oh, there he is. There he is. Mr. Ryan Storm. How are you, my dude?
Ryan?
I'm fantastic. You know, it's saw fish last night, seeing fish again the next 3 nights.
That's right.
How could I be bad?
This is a good point.
I feel you.
So we got a big lineup here today. I want to give everyone a chance to give their thoughts. I'm going to start, Kevin, with you in my bottom left corner of the screen, not the bottom left corner of my heart, though. So, Kevin, give me just like a quick rundown. When was the last time you saw fish? What were your expectations going into this? And what were your thoughts on last night?
Last time I saw fish was Halloween. I flew into Vegas for a 24-hour hit and run to see that show, which is a whole story in itself. But yeah, this was the first time I was at MSG since '91 when I saw the Dead there. So it's a completely different venue than when I saw it before, and it was fantastic. It was everything that Tim had hyped it up to be with me for these past 2 years, saying I had to go. So,
man, that's incredible.
Awesome.
So like 30 plus year gap between going there and seeing the Dead there last and seeing fish now. That's like
Dead at MSG.
Yeah, it's a really kind of beautiful bookend in a lot of cases. I really like how that worked out for you. And did you enjoy last night overall?
Yeah. I mean, as we get into it, I had a few. There are a few things. I like to say that fish is really good at what they do. Sometimes I don't know. I thought that the song selection in the beginning, the first 2 songs, that was fantastic. I didn't know what to do, but when we hit 2 slow songs in a row, that kind of like was a lull in the set.
I want to get into that because I have some thoughts on that. Meg, what I know you want to respond to that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I felt like they came out just with a vengeance that was just totally awesome and just tore it open. And that Carini, I mean, a 19-minute Carini opener. Yes, please. Like, yes, that's how you fucking open MSG when you haven't been there in 800 days. But I definitely felt like the set list construction in the first set definitely affected the pacing and the flow of the set.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna jump into that. I mean, that's definitely. I had thoughts on that as well last night. I think overall, I was like, this show almost reminded me of Arkansas from last year in the sense that I feel like they kind of had to just get through it in some cases, and I think that it was a much better show than Arkansas. But I'm curious. I want to dive into the nuances. But Travis, I want to turn to you. You are now in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, but again, not the bottom left-hand corner of my heart. Last fish show. Thoughts going into this? What did you kind of think?
Yeah, I'm the same as Kev. Last fish shows was the Vegas run, which I think, as we've talked about, everybody who was there knows what a complete shit show that was. So this was, you know, coming into this was anything has to be better than that. So it was only my second time being at the Garden. My first time was New Year's 18 for that show. So this was my kind of return to it. You know, since 93, I've never been East Coast fish guy. Like all my shows are West. So it was a real treat. And it's such a different venue. I know we talked a little bit about it last night too. It's just the vibe, the energy. It's literally their home court. You know, it's like going to see your team in the playoffs at home on home ice or on their court. And it's just, they play different. The energy's different. The crowd is different. Everything's different. And it's just, with that in mind, you can't go wrong. You know, like you're already at another high level going into that with that feeling. So everything else is just kind of gravy to me. And I thought the show was, again, compared to Vegas, was the venue itself, the crowd, everything was great. I thought they played phenomenal. But to your point, it was kind of the opening night show again, sort of that, like I did fall tour. So it felt, again, like Sacramento too, to your Arkansas point. It wasn't as bumpy as Sacramento was because they had a few hiccups in Sacramento to open it. But there were some good jams in that show as well. And it kind of led into what would be one of the great fall tours. You know, like it kind of was that warm-up show of like, hey, you know, because then the next night was San Francisco and they crushed that Carini in San Francisco for that Encore and stuff. And so it kind of was the kickoff to it, which is kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen here too. You know, it's kind of that show, let's kick the rust. And now we're ready to do it for the next 3 nights. So I'm excited what's going to come. And I really think, you know, overall, I've stopped really kind of having negative melt talk towards shows these days. You know, I kind of just appreciate it for what it is after, you know, after seeing Charlie Watts pass away last year and the Taylor Hawkins thing. I just feel like we're so fortunate to get in what we get in that to complain about it is just kind of a ridiculous point these days. So I'm just thankful for what we get. And last night was one of those shows where I was just having fun. That Down with Disease. I'm not the hugest fan of that song all the time, but man, I got down to that thing and I was just having a blast during that jam and stuff. So
that was a great version too. I re-listened to that this morning. That was a great version. Really, really good. And if that's fish being rusty, like, goddamn, we're spoiled. You know?
Right. You know, and to be able to judge them in that way and say that stuff just shows like how good they really are and what our expectations are, which sometimes, you know, are too high.
Way too high.
For a lot of things.
Unrealistic.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of my overall. So,
No, it's a really good point. And I think, you know, and we'll get into this, but like, as much as I felt like last night was an opening show and Arkansas, Sacramento, I think that there's commonalities there. I think that there's enough Carini, Down with Disease, MoMA Dance, Twist.
Stash.
There's enough in there. Stash. There's enough in there that
the howling. Insane. Talk about getting down. Great. There was a huge disco dance party on the floor. It was like 10 of us just like full on. We needed like bell bottoms and sequins. We were like disco raging. It was awesome. I was so excited to hear that song. Just it ripped. I loved it.
I love it. Ryan Storm.
Yes.
Tell us your last show, your thoughts going into this, your first time at Madison Square Garden. Where were you at walking into last night's show and what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so my last show was the Forum in October, which I met you right after.
We did.
Nice. Which was, I mean, that was a really fun show. I know a lot of people, you know, don't have as high opinion on the second set from that show as I do, but I had a great time. It's my first time on the floor as well, so I thought it was great. And yeah, so last night was my first time ever being inside Madison Square Garden. It's funny, the last time Kev was there, I was 9 years from being born.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
So just to date you a little bit. But you know, I think I had a really great time last night. I was up on the Chase Bridge, which is a really cool vantage point. I would say the only downside to there is, you know, you don't get the full effect of the lights, you know, but it was really cool to see, you know, obviously Kuroda has so much extra gear and extra stuff like around the Jumbotron in the middle and like, you know, his MSG setup. It was really, really cool to see and experience the building in person for the first time. You know, I've webcasted so many shows from MSG and it was so cool to be there. I had a really, really great time. You know, looking at historically modern era New Year's runs or MSG runs, outside of something like 2017, usually the first night is that kind of more like up and down warm-up-y night. Even like legendary runs like 2018, the first night is largely forgettable, but then you have 12/29 and 12/30/18, which are like two of the most incredible shows. So, I think last night was really, really solid. Yeah, there was a good amount of slop here and there, but I think, it's their first show in front of an audience on US soil since Halloween, which is crazy. Like, they've played 5 shows in the last 6 months, and just the Mexico run and the 9th Cube New Year's. And so I think, a little bit of rust was going to happen. I think generally last night, the jamming was really, really great. They sounded like super just laid back and loose. I think that, with that Bliss vibe, they didn't really go anywhere dark. I think there were a couple of times where Paige was trying to push it in a different direction, but I think Trey was really in a lighthearted mood last night. Wanted to stick in the Bliss vibe.
Love and light.
Yeah.
Love
Trey.
and light. I think you make a really good point.
They played my podcast song, so I was happy.
They did. They did. One additional song in just for you on the Chase Bridge. This is for that guy. No, I think one of the points you're making is really profound in the sense that, like, we spend months being like, holy shit, I can't wait to see Fish. Oh my God, I can't wait till the tour starts. I can't wait till this run happens. And then the show happens and we do this thing where we're like, it wasn't that great.
Exactly.
And like the reality is, like, I think that, and I think we'll get into this, like there's plenty to nitpick with this run and like with this show. And there's plenty to say, like, personally speaking, I don't think that Reba should have been played last night, which is the only time I've ever said that in my entire life, because, late in the show, there'd been some slop. You just knew it was going to be a rough version. But overall, that's kind of the package that you get with Fish, is that, like, there's going to be chances that are taken. That the beauty of this band is when the chances don't work, they showcase their humanity. When the chances do work, you walk away like, 12/30/18 with an Everything's Right, a Light, Split Open and Melt, all in that second set, that are 3 of the best jams of that overall year. So,
Brian, why they really played that? Sorry, you know why they played that Reba? I mean, if they played Drift for Ryan, then they played the Reba for the Fish bracket to prove that everybody voted incorrectly for letting Ghost win. They had to come out with it.
Reba should have won the bracket.
I really appreciate, Tim, that you don't even let me introduce you. You just jump right in.
Right in.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Donahue. Tim, how are you doing? You're reporting from the forests of of New Amsterdam. Tell us, last Fish show, and what were your thoughts going into this?
I'm fairly certain the last show was at Dick's. I was having trouble remembering if I caught anything on fall, but I don't think so. So it was Dick's run. I came into last night looking for closure, and I saw a bunch of shows last year, and it was fine. We were back on tour, but right before COVID, my last show was Rescue Squad. And this is MSG for me and a lot of people is like the home court, right? I think it's like 26 something shows here, and like it has an energy. And the seeing Trey suspended up there and the anxiety I had leaving that show, and then to have the whole year without it, coming back, it didn't feel fully closed until last night. Going back home essentially and seeing Fish at MSG for me is kind of like this. I don't want to say closure because it's not over, but it's like, all right, we're here, we're back. It felt really comfortable. And the energy in that room, like, you're right. I hear all the nitpicks, and I totally heard, the flubs and everything, but the energy never dissipated last night. At other venues, when you have, like, you go into Leaves or whatever, or Strange Design, people start talking behind you, if you're not on the floor, right? And like, you could feel the focus and the energy dissipate. Last night, it maintained, right, all the way through. So it didn't bother me as much when things slowed down or there were flubs, because, the energy carried us through that show. But no, I thought there was a great solid start and it's going to lead to a good run. I think it was a good indicator that we're going to have a really great end of this run
for sure.
I agree with that completely, and let's dive into it. I think that's a really good point. Like the energy was high from the couch, the energy sounded high in the venue. There were moments in some of these jams where, like, you just remember, and everything you guys have said, I think at least 3 of you have used the term home court to describe MSG, which is something that we really focus on in episode 1 of the Baker's Dozen season coming out next week for Undermine. Is this idea that no spoilers, none. I can tell the spoilers. All right. We focus on this idea that like Fish cultivates this home court at MSG, and that is a part of kind of the confidence that they have as a band at this point in time. And them taking the stage last night, I'll just jump into it. Carini opens it up. So many people are throwing out ideas. I overthought this and said they're going to open up with Auld Lang Syne as kind of like a ha ha ha. We're not going to play a New Year's show, but here's Auld Lang Syne because this is the quote New Year's run. People were saying they're going to open up with Blaze On because of 420, on and on and on.
Can I quickly, before we go on, just on your point of the Auld Lang Syne opener, I did notice as soon as I got in that I also gonna say I posted a review of last night on my blog. Check it out.
You did.
You're doing it already, Ryan? Damn,
yeah,
I had the over on.
Shout out to Ryan's
We haven't gotten
blog.
one song in, and we already got you plugging.
But I was going to say, I noticed immediately that the band's rigs are all on risers that can be very easily moved on and off the stage, which means we are getting a full New Year's gag tomorrow night, which I assume will mean we're getting Countdown and Balloons and Auld Lang Syne played then.
You're all going to have to make New Year's resolutions all over again. So whatever you didn't accomplish in the first 4 months of 2022, get another shot.
It's like your trial run. Like you could do whatever.
Everyone who stopped running on January 10th, start running again.
Exactly. I thought it was a cool thing because, as much as I figured we were going to get a gag, it was nice to have the confirmation that we are indeed going to get one.
Totally. I agree with that. Especially Fish Dry Goods marketing this as New Year's Eve in April. I was like, okay, you guys are leaning into it.
Yeah.
All right, let's take this first set. I want to take it in 2 halves. I see the first half being Carini, Possum, MoMA, and then I would say Leaves because you kind of needed that expected breather at that point in time. My thought, just like as they come out, why not just throw down with heavy metal Carini and then just play it for 20 minutes? Like I don't think that there's a better way that they could have opened this run, but I'm going to open it. Kevin, what were your thoughts in this first quarter of the show, the Carini, Possum, MoMA, Leaves?
Well, the Carini Possum, I think, for me was my highlight of the show. Just the Possum, the energy, that place took off. We got white lighted, Travis, right? Very beginning. The MoMA, I find MoMA interesting now because, like, in Atlantic City, it kind of like opened, it didn't end. All of a sudden, MoMA Dance is unfinished, like Down with Disease always used to be. And I thought the Leaves was perfect in that spot, the cool down. Once we get into the second half of this set, then it becomes a weird thing. But if I left it after Leaves and then the next song had been Stash, I'd say that was perfect. But because Leaves left us in a strange place, It
was an interesting call there, especially like it's a newer ballad. I'm sure that a lot of people are still slightly unfamiliar with it. It's a longer ballad. It's very complex. I personally love this song, and I think it's one of the best recordings on Sigma Oasis. I thought back to the Maple show when they played Leaves, and it was a really, really cool performance. But Travis, what were your thoughts on this opening segment of the show?
I mean, Carini in the one spot, it's almost like, again, that San Fran Carini that was in the Encore spot, where wherever you get it in those kind of unique situations, it just crushes. I mean, it just like to open the show with that, perfect. To close a show with a 19-minute Carini, perfect. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting it, And even when it's sometime in the middle of the show that comes out, I feel like it doesn't always have the same feeling to it as it does in those slots. It's kind of like first tube, like a great opening is first tube and a
Yeah.
great encore is first tube. It's kind of that feeling of like, holy shit, what did we just get? And I always like to leave a show on kind of that high. So getting it that time was nice. But coming into a show, I mean, you're just like, okay, we're throwing fastballs to start this game. All right, let's go, And then to get a possum in the 2-hole, I mean, I'm 1.0 forever. So anything in that area that they hit like a stash or anything that comes through that, I am like all about. And possum, I mean, is always one of my favorite. Just that beginning. I mean,
It's
when
such
you're
a great
building that
segue
hype,
too.
so good. I
The
mean,
beginning
there was a
was
couple
really
great.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And last night, one thing, I know we'll jump ahead a little bit, but one thing last night I thought segues were really good. That twist segue was really good. Like they really
Totally.
kind of had a couple really good butter segues last night that were really beautiful. But that one in a possum, I mean, you can't beat that, in the high, like that, just that building. Kind of like it felt
And they
like
kind of
to your
extended
point-
it.
Oh yeah, it was like stretched out.
Exactly. And
really
to your
good.
point of anticipating like the garden show or like waiting for a show, it's that beginning of that song that kind of like gets that feeling back. Like it's like, let's fucking burn it down, and then
Yeah.
it's boom and you're like in it and let's go. And so like that was great. And then Momo was nice because it's that jammy song, like after that hardcore, you kind of get that flowy jamminess, and then and then we get in that slow song, which I think is perfect right there. It was nice to hear a new song there, which isn't always what you get in that position, but I love it. I love anything new like that you can kind of test out and feel and be like, that really worked right there. That was a great 4-song opening. So yeah, loved it.
Meg, what were your thoughts on this? I know we were texting a bit last night after the show, and you, as expected, you were on like cloud 19. I don't think that it was very, very, very high up in just like happiness. What were your thoughts? Like 20-minute jam to open, possum right after.
Yeah, I mean, I had a real intense like pre-show jitters day yesterday of just being like so pumped up. I couldn't sleep Tuesday night. My stomach was like flipping over. My heart was like racing all day. And then that like adrenaline wore off at lunchtime. And I was like trying to teach third graders. And I was like, just got to make it to the show. And I like had a coffee. And then I like saw my friends, gone to the city. And then we were like just so amped up. And the whole build up was just like so tremendous. And to me, that's some of the best part about going to see Fish is just like reconnecting with your crew, like coming in together, like seeing everybody and just getting into MSG and like seeing the lights go down and everybody just like grabbing each other, and it's Carini and it's just like monster, like just that's exactly what we want. We just want that like throw down. And I agree, like it's funny, Possum isn't like my favorite song, but I thought the version last night was awesome. It was really energetic, really tight, really great placement right after that. And then into the MoMA was just, I love MoMA dance so much. And I always love the funk. I always want to like get down into the soup and like dance really hard. So I was loving it. And Leaves is a vibe, it's like a throwback to a kind of like classic rock ballad that I think it takes some getting used to, I think. And like, I'm still getting used to it. I agree. I thought the placement was really great. And I think that I think it's not everybody's cup of tea yet. And I think these songs kind of grow on people. And I think that that's definitely like seems to be kind of like what Leaves is where it is right now and kind of like the musical canon. But I thought that the first 3-4 songs, I think, were just super awesome. And then I think going into another ballad was just a super weird call. And, Trey can do whatever the hell he wants because he's Trey, and we're all lucky that we get to listen to him play every night. So I have nothing bad to say about anything Trey wants to do. But the stash was insanely played. It was great. It was just so well played, really, really fun. The set as a whole felt short. But maybe that's just because like I was excited. I think it was like 15, 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes shorter than usual on my like crude set break math. But I think it was, I was happy. I thought that the second set was better, but we'll get into that.
Ryan, can you talk about the Carini into Possum, but in context of the second leg of Goose's Winter 2022 tour?
Whoa.
We're not. I don't like to compare the two.
I know.
I will say last night is not the best concert that I've seen this year so far. So that
fair point.
I will say that. I think it's currently number 2. The Carini was just such a great way to open the show. From the get-go, I think Trey modulated out of Carini into a major key like a minute into the jam. Like he was ready to just get into that bliss zone.
Yeah.
No
There's no holding
evil,
back.
no evil Carini last night. It was really cool. Paige was kind of jumping all over the place on his rig during Carini, using that new Prophet synth that he added to the rig in Mexico. I do want to note that I did notice last night that his Nord keyboard that he uses for samples and stuff has been moved from on top of the organ to now being on top of the Rhodes and CS60, and the Prophet is now on top of the organ. For anybody who understands what I'm talking about, shout out to you. But a very minor swap in his rig that was cool to notice.
Did you from noticing that's really cool? Did you
Yes.
did you get any, just like from your own perspective, is there anything that you could ascertain as to why that might happen? Like, was there is he moving from the organ more to the keyboard? Like, where does your head go with that?
So I think maybe he wants to use the Prophet in conjunction with the organ more. He made it now so he has one synthesizer on each part of his rig, excluding the piano clav at the front. And so I think maybe he wanted to split up the CS60, which is his big one on top of the Rhodes. That's like that characteristic late 1.0 synth sound.
Yeah.
Because in Mexico we had the Prophet on top of the CS60, and they're a little bit similar, and maybe he just wanted to have that synth option separately
on top
and then
of the organ.
I don't know where his head is at with the samples, especially because it might be a bit of a stretch for him because he plays whirly on a bunch of the songs. But I don't want to get too into keyboard nerd language because not everybody knows it as well. Like
no, but like the adjustments are interesting
because a non-fish fan sometimes.
Hey, just stay with me for the next 10 minutes and I promise you'll get it.
Exactly.
No, but it's interesting because what did he move to Trey side before last summer tour that had such an impact? What was that? What keyboard was that?
So the organ for the entirety of Fish's career was directly to his left on Trey's side, because that was the focus of the rig and the jamming until around 2017 was like organ, clav, piano. That was like the main stuff that he was going to during jams. And so the organ was right there next to him, also because, he'll play piano with his right hand and organ with his left hand. And it's very easy to do it when it's right next to you. And then last year in Arkansas, the organ was flipped to his right side. And he flipped the Whirly and Moog 1 to Trey's side because, as we all know, last summer, the synth and the electric piano really, really took over the band's sound and what Paige is doing in jams. And so that became the focal point. And, that's continued through in the organ. That's fair. Thank you.
Jonathan.
And the organ really took a backseat for a lot of last year. I think he kind of rediscovered it around Dick's, but if you listen to most of last year's summer tour, you're not hearing a lot of organ in jams at all, which is such a change. Like it was being used a lot, even as the synth was beginning to take over. It's all over a lot of 2019 jams. And so it was interesting to see him take that step. And then actually after Arkansas, he put the organ at the back and put the Rhodes on his right. So that means on either side of him, he has different electric piano synth combos, which is cool because the Rhodes, for anyone who doesn't know, is that more like silky, phasery sound. And the Whirly is like the flatter, funkier one. Just if that helps.
It does.
But yeah, it was cool to see last night. He was using the organ a fair amount. And now it's interesting to look like last night during Disease, he's doing like this balancing act where his piano, right hand piano, left hand organ, but like the organ's at the back. And I was watching him with his feet, like because he controls the Leslie speed for the organ with a foot switch. And so he was like dancing back and forth between piano sustain pedal and then reaching with his other foot to tap the Leslie switch and work the volume pedal on the organ. So it was really some cool acrobatics from Paige.
That's incredible.
Yeah, the perspective from the Chase Bridge was cool because I have a good viewpoint of the stage.
Yeah, you can see right down into it.
Yeah.
Like right down into his rig. That's awesome.
Which
And
is
it's interesting because that
on the floor just saw everybody's shoulders. So.
right.
It's interesting because it brings up like a larger discussion that we have here at HFPod often, which is this idea about intentionality on stage.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of legwork and physical work for Paige to do literally in the first 10 minutes of the show. There's no, we're going to play AC/DC bag and you play some organ, you play some piano, but like it's 7 minutes and then we're into the show and everything's cool. Or we're going to play, just throw out your standard opener and we're just going to play that so everyone feels comfortable and confident on stage. No, we're giving you, Paige, a song that you are probably going to want to go to multiple keyboards for because we're going to go into various sections. And is that something they talk about before they walk on stage? Because, Carini accomplishes basically 3 things here. It shocks the crowd and it's like, holy shit, the show started. Oh my God. And it's Carini. But then it also easily leads to a jam because it's a song that they're comfortable jamming. So it allows them exploration. But then here it allows Paige to show off some new gear. But as you're talking about from a physical standpoint, he has like the most he has to reach on stage. Whereas, Trey is focused on his pedals, Mike's focused on his pedals. Obviously, Fishman's moving the whole show, but thank you. That was keyboard segment with Ryan Storm. We'll be back with more updates throughout. I want to move
also,
through.
I just want to say too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fishman is MVP of this show too.
Yeah.
Personal feelings.
Yes.
I have a lot to say when we get to Stash.
Oh my God, he was just filling in, like he was doing fills. It was gorgeous.
I was texting with a friend last night and he was like, who do you think practices the most in Fish? And I was like, it's Fishman
for sure.
It's like 4 or 5 hours a day. He looks at it like a job and that's what he does. And he comes in ready every single tour. Tim, I want to give you a chance to comment here if you have any thoughts on the first part of the set, but I want to transition to the back half of the set as well. So give me your thoughts on like the opening and we'll move into Stash from there.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing to add was I thought Carini was a very poignant decision because there's a lot of things being discussed if they're going to lean in on the 420 thing, with like a blaze on right off or light up and leave me alone. And I feel like all the gimmicks and everything around this being New Year's in April, the Carini choice was what can we do that's so rock solid, our foundation, right? This is Fish, raging and jamming and MSG. That's it. Right. Everything else that you have, all your other preconceived notions, just throw them out. You're here. We're raging. And that's kind of why I think they made that choice. And then the other thing, too, I noticed right in the beginning, and I guess this is a general comment, is the band looks great. They look really good. Like Fish, like last year, I mean, none of us looked great coming out of the first quarantine. But like,
I haven't seen anyone in 18 months. What the hell?
Yeah, and like honestly, last year Fish was rough. Like you remember that? I mean, I don't want to get personal, like coming out of the divorce and the hair thing, everything. Last night they were healthy, they were smiling, they were and they felt energetic. There was no like, oh, we're rounding, into the 9th inning, or I'm not gonna do sports metaphors analogies, but you know what I mean? Like it felt like there's a lot of potential energy there we're going to see for a long time, which was really great to see. It was Fish in particular. I was happy to see him looking so good. Mm-hmm. But I actually wanted to disagree with everybody too. I thought
love it.
Everybody was like Leaves was really well placed, but not everybody's favorite song. I feel the opposite personally. I love Leaves. I think it is one of my favorite songs, but I didn't like the placement. I understand traditionally the cool down spot, and I know Trey's in control, and I have nothing that I can do about it. But again, the MSG energy and the coming in, how they did with that segue between Carini into Possum, I felt like that was the opportunity that they don't get all the time, where they could have just kept riding that a little further.
Put on the gas, yeah.
Like we didn't get to where it needed to get. And if they had saved that Leaves for like after another big peak, towards the back end of the first set, or even in the second set, I think it would have been perfect. I think the placement of it was a little bit, it was rough because they didn't get where they needed to get with the Possum. They got close, but we needed a little more, I felt like.
It's a good point.
Interesting counter.
I'm also a junkie. I'm just like, give me more. What the hell? Don't stop.
Enough.
Yeah,
right.
It's an interesting counterpoint, and I think that like the fairness to your argument is that Leaves is a new song and it's going to challenge people to be in the moment. Some people have only heard it once or twice. It may be a lot of people's first time hearing it live, and we all know that like a lot of Fish songs, you can hear it on tape, you can hear it couch touring, and you're actually in the arena and it hits in a different manner. So it's a fair point. I don't know if I totally agree, but I accept it. We'll accept that here for the counter.
Fish fans with different opinions? That never happens.
Never happened. It's never happened. There's one opinion, it's right, and everything else is wrong, right? No.
Yeah.
So they do Strange Design next, which my only note on it was that you had to play it here and now. Like the meaning of that song is kind of, it speaks to the vibe that we're kind of eternally in right now, which is, life is short. Let's do these things that we care about. Let's do these things that we love. Let's look around at the people that we care about and that we love, which, when they're on stage, they're thinking about each other. They're thinking about their families. When you're in the crowd, you're thinking about your friends. You're thinking about your family. You're thinking about how lucky you are to be at a Fish show. But let's move into that stash.
Yes.
Because my first note on the stash was I'm curious how they'll approach this, considering how outstanding it was throughout 2021. And we're at this really cool point where, we have this break in 2020, not accepted by the band. The band didn't want to have a break, obviously, but the world gave them one. And we're at this interesting point now where we've had a year of Fish, very high quality Fish. And now we can look at all these songs that were played so well last year and wonder, is it going to have another big year? Is Stash going to take a step back this year? Is it going to have another big year? Is Carini going to take a step back? No, these two performances have shown us already. And if you go back to Mexico, the Carini from Mexico was absolutely incredible as well. We're seeing songs that had big 2021s have a big start to 2022. I don't mean to bring the sports analogies in here, but it's the same sort of idea. It's like, you have a guy who has a great season and he comes back the next year. Are they going to be able to maintain it? This stash, it had space. It was delicate at times. It had staccato jams. It had this like undermined style evil jam. It had this evil peak, and then it moves back into stash. Travis, what were your thoughts on this stash?
Again, 1.0 Stan here, so give it to me. Like, stick it in my veins. I love it. But I thought it was great. The staccato, like you mentioned, was so fun. Like, I loved that in it. Like, I thought there was just moments in it where it had that, it kind of had that balance of like, could it go evil? Like we were talking about, could it get a little dirtier? Could it get a little there? Should we keep it a little lighter? It kind of like walked that line and kind of kept you in it. And it was everything I wanted out of it, to be honest with you, where you got it. And, it was the first, this and Into That Blaze On was our first and only real 420 kind of song, song moment was that Stash Blaze On, which is like, take your stash and blaze it. I was like, oh, they finally got into the moment for it. And other than Mike wearing all green, that was kind of our only indication of sort of leaning into that feeling.
Leaves?
Yeah, kind of. Would have been better weeds, but should have been some weeds. But yeah, that's true. You could kind of go with leaves too. But it was just, I'm glad they didn't, because Fish, every time you think they're going to go right, they go left and then diagonal. Like they never do what you think they're going to do. So like to your point earlier, of trying to call an opener or whatever and thinking they're going to play weed songs or something in that zone, they just like, no, we're just going to go out and do this. And you're like, okay, fine, I'm fine with that. But that stash was, and even my fiance, who is fairly new to the Fish scene. In fact, the 18 New Year's show was her first show, but since then I think she's seen now 12 shows with me in like 2 years or whatever. I'm like, in 2 years you got 12 shows. When I saw them in 2 years, I had 2 shows. Like 93, 94, I saw 2 shows.
Yeah.
But she's getting into it now, and like she's getting her favorites, and Carini is like one of her favorites. She likes Evil Fish, so Carini she loves. But last night she kind of leaned over to me and she's like, what song is this? I was like, it's Stash. She's like, this song slaps and has now made my list of songs I love. And I was like, sweet, you're getting it. Like, awesome. So that said a lot to me of like how good that Stash was, because she's a little bit of a critic, but she loved it. So that kind of tells you like where my head was at. And then Into That Blaze On, which I thought was kind of odd. And to your point, what you were just talking about is some of the Blaze Ons we've gotten recently that really go out there and really get their jam.
Deer Creek.
This one, like I thought coming out of that stash, I was like, oh, this Blaze On's going to jam. Like, we're going to get somewhere with this. And then I can't wait to see what they close the set with after that jam. So it was really kind of a weird, like, we didn't quite get up that hill. We just kind of called it, and then we went to set break. And I was like, are they tired? Are they out of shape? Like, what just, like, that was a really short set. I know you mentioned that earlier, too, but I felt the same thing. I was like, that felt early. And then they took a long break, which I thought, okay, maybe a short set meant a short intermission, and we'll be back into this. But they took, like, an almost extended break and waited till, again, like, their normal time to come back on. So it gave us a ton of time to like relax, and then that second set started. So I thought that was a kind of weird ending to that set, and kind of like it was a great way to go out. Don't get me wrong, I love the Stash and the Blaze, but I thought we could have gotten a little bit further up that hill before we did that set. So.
What's funny?
What happened with the lighting truss? Did something happen with like part of the lights during?
Did they?
During which one?
There were a bunch of people out on stage during set break, and they brought down part of the lights. And they were like, it
may have been a technical issue, but to your point about the set lengths, it's funny. The first set felt really short. It was 75 minutes, which is a very normal length for a first set. But yeah, I agree that it seemed to fly by. I will say that I feel like we're a bit out of practice with seeing shows still, because set break was about as long as I figured it would be. It was 40 minutes long, which is, I think, a normal length for a Phish set break nowadays. But I will agree that Blaze On was kind of an awkward end to the set. And I think that's kind of why it felt like a shorter set, because it was just kind of like, oh, an 8-minute Blaze On. And, like, I get that they wanted to play it for 420, but I would have rather them honestly throw a character zero in that slot. If you're going to play something for 8 minutes, I'd rather it be a character zero, which when they start it, I'm like, okay, this is going to be 8 minutes. Trey's going to rip a guitar solo and the set's going to end. Versus Blaze On, where they give you that, like, are they going to jam this?
Do you think they know, though, Ryan? Because, like, I feel like they went in anticipating to rock it and to jam it out, and it just didn't land, right? Like, I feel like you have some control over it, but sometimes you don't. And they probably wanted to have another Deer Creek-style Blaze On, but they ended up with, like, not
just a regular one. Yeah, just an average Blaze On.
I mean,
an average Blaze On. So
they're improvisational musicians sometimes, when they're not playing composed music, and that's just it's an art. It's not a science, right? And so, like, sometimes it goes where they expect, sometimes it doesn't. And I think as an artist, you have to be completely open to where it goes. Otherwise, you would never get to where they get. And sometimes it doesn't go far. And I think that's just like the way it is. And that's probably why that set was a little shorter. And I also think the ending, like when they ended that song, my friends turned to me and I was like, set break. And they were like, no, it's not set break yet. Like, they're not. And I'm like, I think I just saw them bow. And they're like, no, it's not over yet. Like, they're so good. Like,
Trey seemed to hesitate after they played the last note. There seemed to be like a few seconds before he took his guitar off, like where the lights went blue again. And I was like, oh, are they doing another one? And
it was
then,
like
maybe
the house
they
lights
were
went
having
blue,
a technical issue. Maybe they were, and they were getting stuff in their earpieces that was like,
maybe
we got to pull out. I don't know. But yeah, it was, if that's the case, they came back and we never knew the better of her second set. That's for sure.
Hey, Megan and Brian, I don't want to be rude and interrupt, but my phone's actually going to die. Field correspondence. This is how it goes.
It's all right, Tim. We'll get you back in the studio in 90, and we'll do the updated report. No, have a great day, man. Thank you for joining us.
I do want to plug tomorrow because RJ is going to swing by too. And Tom, tomorrow, fan art. Look Plus is doing a live broadcast from 2 to 4. And we're going to have Greg Knight, PR with Goose, and host of Great Beyond podcast. We're going to have Benji Eisen. You guys, everybody knows Benji, New York Times bestselling author. And then, of course, RJ and Tom. We're giving out Goose tickets. We got tickets for Radio City and some summer tickets we're going to be giving out on the broadcast and at the table. And we'll be chilling. So come hang out and see us at Fan Art. Or if you're not in New York, go watch it on YouTube at Look Plus.
That's awesome.
Sounds like an awesome thing, man. Thank you for joining us, Tim. We'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I agree, I think, with what everyone is saying in various ways about the Blaze On, because I felt it the same as well. Like, it's a big spot for the song. It kind of is this wink, towards the holiday, and it's kind of this, that's a song that's had some amazing versions inside of that venue. You think about the Baker's Dozen version. You think about 2018, I believe. is it 1229 has a really good blaze on? I know that 123019 has a really good blaze on. There's like an underrated one from both 1229 2018 as well as 1230 2019. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, that 123019 I think is the really good one.
That's
the one nobody
the only reason they
talks
don't
about
talk
because of the
about it.
tweezer.
Yeah.
It's
The
that
Ruby
like,
Waves from that show is also phenomenal, but that's
Really
that's
good.
not what we're talking about here.
No. But I felt like it's a big spot for it, and it's also, I thought when it first started it was probably going to end the set because they have utilized it in that space as like Blazon's almost it's kind of like what Disease used to be, where you could hear like a 10-minute long Down Disease in 1999 and it absolutely just like rips and it completely shreds, or you could hear a 25-minute version in 1999. You know, it's got this dexterity from a rockin' song to a jam vehicle, and Blazon kind of fits that spot right now. But it felt as though, you know, it was playful. Trey sounded kind of bouncy throughout it, and it felt like there just needed to be a little bit, at least from my perspective, a little bit more focus on the peak, because we weren't going to get a jam version, and we didn't totally get that. And so as a result, and to me, that is, it goes back to the same feeling I have about this entire show from the start. I have no idea how you play this show. Like, I don't know, as even professional musicians, how you walk on that stage. You know, emotionally, they've been looking forward to this show since
it got canceled.
Yeah, but probably even before that.
January 1st, 2020. They were
probably right. Like the last time they played MSG, they were probably like, "Cool, we'll be back next year." And then, "Oh shit, we're not coming back next year." Okay, we'll be back next year. Oh no, this isn't. You know, this is just like kept being pushed back, and that emotional release, like. I just don't know how you play this concert. So I in some cases I keep coming back to like they had to just get through tonight or last night's show. And I think they did a much better job than anyone could have ever imagined, despite some of the challenges that we're talking about. I want to pause before we go into set 2. Does anyone have anything that they want to add about the stash? I want to make sure everyone gets their thoughts about that. Yes, I knew you did.
Yes. So I just recently did an episode of We Moved Through Stormy Weather with Scott Marks talking about Stash. And so check it out if you haven't. But, you know, I really kind of looked at, you know, really diving into, we looked at Amsterdam 97 and Shoreline from last year. And it's really cool listening to a defining feature of a lot of Stash jams is that throughout, Fishman's just doing that gentle hi-hat rhythm. And last night I noticed right from the get-go on the jam, he was doing this like kind of galloping thing on the hi-hat that was a lot more aggressive than he does normally. And I think that really, you know, as soon as he started doing that, I was like, oh, this is going somewhere. Like Fishman has made the statement that this isn't your typical Stash. And I think that really, you know, it's one of those things where he provoked Trey into doing something cool with it. Jonathan mentioned like it was like a Tweezer Reprise Z kind of vibe at one point, Trey playing like some ascending chords. And then I thought, you know, wasn't the longest Stash, but packed a lot into its 12 minutes. And I think they absolutely nailed returning back to the theme at the end. You know, it's very easy. You know, we'll see later in the show a less smooth return to the end of a song. But I thought they really, really did that well. And it's really cool to see. You know, obviously it's really cool to see when Fishman is like, you know, makes a statement like that. And it's very clear that he is the one that drove the jam there. There was also a really cool percussive sound that I think Trey was making right at the beginning of the jam, but I thought it was Fishman. I don't know what it was, but it was cool.
There's really something amazing when they play in Madison Square Garden. The sound in that room is so incredible, and and the feeling when they're in a rhythmic section, you can feel the floor in certain sections, certain areas. My favorite spot in the room is Page side, just like slightly on this angle, not behind the stage, but just like that in between segment between behind the stage and side stage. And if you stand like in the right spots there, when they get into those rhythmic sections, like you can really feel the floor bouncing. And you can also see into Page's rig. That's awesome. But like that point you're making about like the rhythmic nature of that entrance into the Stash Jam, you could pick it up from home where like it's the moment, and the webcast does such a good job of capturing this now, where like the camera angle hits on the lights that are like reflecting off of the crowd, and like you can hear the crowd start to bubble up. And it's something that you get in MSG even from home in a way that you don't in a lot of other venues, where that rhythmic type of jamming, when the band is into it, oh man, it's just like everybody in the room is completely connected in such a cool way, and they just know that the band is locked in on very simple musical ideas, but to end up there after Stash is just, it's super impressive. So I loved that. Let's jump into set 2.
Yeah.
All right. So we opened set 2 with a rockin' version of Sigma Oasis. This is one of those, this and Lonely Trip to me are like, these are like the pandemic anthems from Fish in a lot of cases. You know, they speak to the vibe of it. And I thought it was really appropriate for them to open up this second set with this song, which then moves into what I would consider the highlight of the show, the Down with Disease. But what were you guys' thoughts? Let's take Sigma, Down with Disease, The Howling, Twist, and Mountains. The first 5 songs. This all feels like a suite of music to me. Kevin, what were your thoughts on this?
Down with Disease. I find since they came back, Trey has started ending songs like Ghosts. They'll come back and end it. Down with Disease, and every time it's a goddamn train wreck. They just, they need to jam another 2 or 3 minutes, get back into the vibe before they hit the end, because it just seems like Trey's like, all right, let's get to the end of this. I want to do the ending, boom. And, but that Disease was beautiful. It had all those great places in it. It was expansive, and I was floored by that one. Disease is, for me, Disease. It's always huge. So it takes a lot to make me walk away and say, wow, that one was extra special.
Yeah, Disease is it's this song that, disease is like the feeling that everybody gets, it's like cheese. Like there's cheese everywhere. You know what I mean? Like there's cheese on sandwiches, there's cheese on pizza, there's cheese in pasta. Like you can almost take it for granted. But then like you have like a really good piece of cheese and you're like, holy shit. Like I'm so thankful that animals make this and I can eat it and I can put it on crackers. I can
that
throw
ain't no
some Parmesan on
you
my
got
pizza.
there.
I love this analogy.
You know what I mean? But like, it's just like you overlook it. It's Down with Disease. Like, oh yeah, it's going to open like every 3rd, 2nd set that I see.
Yeah.
But when it clicks, like last night, you're just like, thank you for writing this song and for tuning in, like for allowing this song to course through you guys in the best way possible. Meg, you texted me this morning. I think you were 10, 11 minutes into the jam and you were like, this is beautiful. And I totally agree. Like that segment right there, but tell me your thoughts on this. Cause this, you get the shock jam of Carini, but like, this is like the jam vehicle placed in the proper place.
Yeah. First of all, I love Sigma Oasis. To me, that was like, I listened to that album on repeat in early 2020 when it came out. So to me, it just hits somewhere good for me. But this Down with Disease, when they started it, I remember like a total dork. I was like, we're going to need to clear some space. Like I was like ready to like get down. I actually think I said that, which is like kind of actually really embarrassing. But you know what? It worked. I got some space. So we really got down so hard. And this jam is awesome. It's beautiful. It's melodic. I felt like last night, a lot of their jamming, they were getting to sections that sounded really composed. It was really pretty. It was like really soulful and transcendent a lot of times. And I think that it was really more positive, like really like I always joke like it, but it really is like was like love and light last night. I think Trey felt a lot of gratitude for being back there. And there's just something about that room. And it's like the roundest room and there's just something encompassing about it. And when you're on the floor and you look up, you can see everybody's faces when the light hits, right? Like behind the stage, you can actually like see people. And that's just so magical and makes you feel so connected. And the lights hit people's faces. And it's just, I think that like there are moments in the show that I just felt like super blissed out. And I think that this Down with Disease was one of those moments where the way that the music was coming through was gorgeous. And this Into the Howling was my highlight of the show for sure. the howling just came perfectly out of that Down with Disease. The Down with Disease kind of like fizzled, and then the howling just like kind of like built up. And it's still a new enough song where it takes me a minute where I'm like, what is this again? And then I'm like, oh, awesome. And it was just, I mean, I haven't seen Fish live since Atlantic City, so I haven't seen any of this stuff. So this was my first howling, and it was just, I mean, I mentioned it before earlier, but again, it was real disco party. It was just, this is exactly how I like my Fish. Like, I'm a 1.0 1997 Fish girl. Like, I like my funk. I like, I like to get down. Like, this was it. So for me, I'm a totally converted to howling, like top of the list now. Like, that was that point of the show. I was like, they're locked in. And I think Twist, that segue, we mentioned it, but it was perfect. It was really beautiful, really, really nicely done. And then I think an awesome cool down to Mountains in the Mist. I know maybe people are saying it wasn't the most perfectly played, but I didn't hear it. I was riding the Bliss vibes. I was riding the MSG love. So it was a great beginning to that set. I thought those first 5 songs were beautiful.
I wrote my notes just regarding the Twist segue. Twist is such a great song to stumble on in the middle of set 2. And I love when you hear them segue into it in an unexpected way, because it's kind of that moment where you're like time really becomes a flat circle at that point. You're like, when you're like, oh my God, we're in Twist, like we're out of a jam, and like it sounds like a jam itself. And this idea of we've been doing whatever activity it is to get us to and be in the Fish show for probably 8 to 10 hours by the middle of the second set. Like, whatever you've done to go to the Fish show, like you've been doing that activity. You've been prepping since like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, even if you had to work ahead of time. And so to then stumble into Twist, it's kind of the moment where like, it just comes full circle that, yeah, we're at a Fish show and almost anything is possible. It's one of those songs that when they start to play it, it feels just so right, middle of the second set. Even when it's played earlier in the show, you're just like, oh my God, like, I don't know. There's something so late night and seedy to me about Twist in a way that I just love. But
it's greasy. It's greasy.
It's very
that.
greasy.
I love that.
It sounds like 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, it's got such a groove to it that you would only stumble upon late at night. But yeah, I share everything you said. Like, the Disease touched upon things that I love I want in any Fish jam. There was this kind of weird kind of post-rock tortoisey type of jam about 8 to 10 minutes in, and then we move into this Bliss zone, and then it's kind of this bubbly groove that, I don't want to be blasphemous here to anyone, but like it reminded me at times of Reading, the Down Disease from Reading, where it's like this bubbly groove that can almost just like emerge into a heroic peak. I don't think the peak was as heroic as we got at Reading, but it did emerge into this like heroic moment of like, oh my God, this is it. This is why we're back. This is the home court vibe. I thought the howling was a great call in the slot that it was in. That's the point where you put a new song that's going to rock people at that point in time. And it felt like they got into a really cool hypnotic groove. Trey was cheesing, not to bring up any more cheese analogies, but like he was smiling ear to ear.
I love cheese, Brian. I'm here for these analogies.
Anything I can do to talk about cheese, I'm into it. We're going to do a fish and cheese podcast. Ryan, I want to give you a chance. What were your thoughts on the Disease? What were your thoughts on the howling? And you had such great thoughts earlier in the show about Paige. Anything that you noticed that he was doing during these jams to add to it?
Oh, I've got lots. We'll starting with the Sigma Oasis. I don't want to skip over that. Megan mentioned Leaves having that kind of classic rock ballad vibe. Sigma Oasis is that classic rock song vibe. It really sounds like a classic rock tune. I really
right there with you.
I really love the song.
Love it.
It's a great tune. I was really happy, my first time seeing it live. And I think this was the first time of the night. It happened a couple of times during the second set where I really think Paige was interested in jamming it out. He's moving over to the synths. He was on the Rhodes for a lot of the Sigma jam, which just sounded so nice. I absolutely love the way the Rhodes sounds. but it sounded to me like he was trying to push it in a new direction, kind of like where the Dix one went. And I'm really hoping we get more jammed out Sigma Oasis, Sigma Oases. Is that the
That's
plural?
the plural. Yeah,
That's
that's
the
the
plural?
proper plural take.
Okay.
The Oases.
Never heard of more than one Oasis. So
It's usually one thing that comes singularly. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point.
yes,
But
not a fish show. There's more than one Oasis, I guess.
yeah, the show is the Oasis. So I just thought it
very
was
meta.
interesting to hear, Paige seemed to try to want to push in a new direction, and Trey was kind of like save that for the Disease, basically. I thought, there was a couple of minor flubs in Disease, nothing that couldn't be forgiven based on the jam. Kev, to your point about them finishing songs, I feel like they don't finish Disease that often still. And so I think it's still a novelty. I mean, despite the fact that the drop back into the ending was a little bit rocky, I was very excited because it's my first time seeing a finished Disease. I absolutely love when they find their way back at the end. A really good example of them doing it really well recently after Jam 9/1/18, I believe, at Dick's. That one is really, really great, like 18 minutes or so. They get a nice jam, then they find their way back to the ending really, really well. But this jam, more just Page on the Roads action, major key groove, just absolutely uplifting. Fishman being absolutely relentless yet again, standing out. And it was just going and going and going, and then Trey just very subtly started building it up, and then they reached that like peak towards the end, and then he got a little overexcited and went back into the ending. A little bit.
It's definitely something that they rehearse like would be tight, but
Yes.
like I kind of don't want them to rehearse it because I want that unknown of like most times Down with Disease is going to be unfinished.
Yeah.
And it's going to segue into another song. And I'd rather have that element of surprise where if they're going to come back into it, yes, it's rough and it's not something that you'd put down in a studio, but it's surprising when they finish it now. It's this back and forth of when they do actually finish it, you're like, oh my God, like that was a finished Disease after 21 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
When they don't, it's kind of the standard at this point in time, and it leads to more magic in the second set. But it's the eternal back and forth of like, do we want Fish to practice more so that they're tighter, or do we want them to be loose and allow just like ideas and creativity to come out? I don't think that like they're number two is kind of where I'm at. Like that's to me the show, but and I don't think that what they played last night was in any way on par with like how they played at their sloppiest in like 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I think that ultimately
that's like offensive. I don't think we can compare. We're not comparing last night to 2.0. We're just
I just last night to the last time they did an April run.
I just mean that like there are different eras of Fish where like you have these super tight periods where like they're incredibly heavily rehearsed and their rehearsing bleeds over to the stage where the show is very tight and slightly contrived. But then there's other moments where like they don't rehearse and they kind of just go up on stage and allow the show to like let itself happen. Last night felt more like a happy medium to me of a band that the emotions really got to them, the energy really got to them. As a result of that, there were a few missed changes, but there was also a show that, as I think we're all breaking down here over the last hour and change, we all kind of walked away from thinking that's a really great moment. That's a really great moment. I can't wait to see how they build upon that going forward. Anyone have any final thoughts about the first half of the second set, or do you guys want to move into the conclusion? Ryan has thoughts.
I just want to mention, I always have thoughts.
You do.
I just want to mention about Mountains in the Mist. That's a song that always kind of slips beneath my radar. I love it so much, but I forget that it exists sometimes. And then I hear it, like it comes up on shuffle or something, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I love this song. Mm-hmm. So I was so happy to hear it last night. It was like, I think it worked really well in the second set ballad slot. They took their time with it. It was mellow, and the crowd seemed pretty attentive for it. I loved it. I thought that was great. And, Howling into Twist was fantastic.
It's my favorite Fish ballad, and it took me like 75 shows to see it. So I'm very happy to get it anytime. You're right. It's rare. I think it's only been played like 35, 40 times. It's like 99 is the most appearances for it when it debuted. Let's jump into the conclusion of the show here. So we had Reba and Drift While You're Sleeping closing out set 2. I will just come out with it. I think the only song they should not have played last night was Reba. I love Reba. This is not a call against Reba. I will hear Reba at any show. The way they were playing last night, I was like, this late in the show, playing a really complicated composed song. I don't know, guys. And I feel like I'm justified based on the way that the performance was. The jam was beautiful, but the actual composed section was really, really rough. Like really, really rough. I think at one point Trey just stopped playing altogether. The jam was beautiful. As Jonathan's saying, I'm currently on drugs, which, nobody can prove or disprove. All right? I'm doing this remotely, guys. Okay?
Oh my God, I love you, Jonathan.
Shout out to Sunset Lake CBD for supplying his drugs.
Seriously, it's that mellow body high. It's getting to you, Brian.
I do want to just say, I thought the way to close out the set of 2 composed songs, one that's very old and one that's very new, was a very cool call. I dug that from a set listing standpoint. I can understand that the energy may have dropped off a bit based on having 2 of those in the back. It's kind of one of the things I've heard just through the over the grapevine, over the cheese vine, if you will. But I thought it was an interesting call to end the overall show. Ryan Walker agrees with me for different reasons. He's coming into town tomorrow. He thinks they should have waited on Reba. I'm right there with you, Ryan. Thank you for backing me up. I'll open it to the floor. What did you guys think of the end of the second set here and the encore of Gumbo and Slave?
Reba was a troll. Reba was definitely a troll. It had to be. And I am not a Drift While You're Sleeping person. I think Drift While You're Sleeping lyrics needed to have somebody else look at them before Trey recorded them. I cringe when I hear it. I don't know.
I mean, Reba, I think to your point, it was definitely a little rough. But again, you're getting a Reba, like you're still getting that.
And they whistled. They whistled.
And we got the whistle. They whistled, which I always like, and again, there's 2 songs that have those bliss moments in them that stick it right in my veins because it takes me to the most beautiful place in the world. And that's the Hood bliss. And that's the Reba bliss. And I can never get enough of that. And knowing the Reba bliss is coming as soon as they start that song, I'm like, I don't even care. Just do what you got to do and get me to the bliss, and then you get to that bliss and no matter what it is, no matter if it's good or it's still bliss and you're still there and you're still going. And I even had 2 chompers 2 rows behind me talking during bliss. And I'm like, how can you talk during this part of the song? Like, this is insane to me, but it didn't let them ruin my moment. I stayed in my moment and stayed clear and just thought I'm staying in here. And it's that thing, it's just that whole set, like we were saying, like I got there with Down with Disease for whatever reason, that one just kicked me in the butt last night and really got into me. That Twist was phenomenal that I just got down with. Howling, of course, I love that it's out now and we're going to hear that more. And it's, thank God, like, let's bring that in more. And that Reba, but the bliss was still there. And I'm not going to go into it because I've talked about it ad nauseum before, but I am not a Drift While You're Sleeping fan either. It's just not for me. I appreciate the people that love it. I appreciated watching the floor get down and really get into Trey there at the end. And I appreciate Trey doing all he could to jam that thing out at the end and really get that emotional, energy going with the crowd and stuff at the end. And and the white lights hit and it's, move through and everyone's going. It's great. I love the energy. I love the people that love that song. It's just not for me. It's just not personally my day. I don't like closing a set with it. I don't like it in an encore spot. I don't like it. It's just not for me. It's too much. So that said, it wasn't the greatest way to close the show. Whatever. We'll move on from that. Gumbo. I feel like Gumbo, when you get a stash, you get a Gumbo sometimes. It's like when you get like mercury, you get sand or steam. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's songs that kind of connect. So I wasn't shocked that we got that Gumbo. I was a little shocked with the way they played it. It felt like very truncated and very short, it was like, okay, we're going to do a double encore, but let's do a gumbo. And you're like, why would you do that? Just jam the gumbo out and give me like a Caridi 20-minute encore gumbo. But, respect to them for doing the double. And, I'm not going to complain about it because they still closed it beautifully. So, it's kind of where I was at the end of the show. And again, you can't beat MSG. You walk out of that place going, I can't fucking wait for tomorrow night. You know what I mean? So they leave you with that, and that's how it should be. So
I felt the same way during the Reba. I feel like Reba's always worth the price of admission, even if it's not perfect. Like my friend, we were on the floor and she just grabbed my hand and she's like, the lights are coming, here it is. And it's just that blue and pink light, and it just blasted us on the floor, and we were just squeezing each other's hands, and we were like, like, when do you get to feel joy like this with 25,000 people? Like, you're fucking welcome, like, this is like, we are in a world right now where like so much is so fucking terrible. And like, here we are, sorry, I'm swearing a lot, but like, here we are in like the positivity, and we're like just generating joy communally. Like, this is a total gift. And I just felt really like happy to be there, and happy to get a Reba, and happy to be in that space. And I'm going to oppose you on this drift while you're sleeping thing. I completely hear what you're saying about the lyrics. I actually get it. But during the pandemic, I was like driving to get groceries while I was like quarantined, and I was so sad about everything. And I heard that song and I was like sobbing in the car. And there is just something about Trey when he's like super raw and emotional that I find really authentic and humbling and appreciative, that as an artist, you can say things that sometimes might sound cheesy, but are actually truly heartfelt. And to bring that and put that out there out of yourself takes courage on a level that it's next level, honestly. And he's just being so raw, and I love it. And I'm here to cheese out together, Brian, and, hug each other and be thankful that we're moving through stormy weather together. So
to your point with that, I will say that it is impressive to see the growth of them. Like when you take 1.0 and what they were, and the lyrics and the compositions, and you're like, but that's the band I fell in love with, was that kind of, Fish. So to see them grow and evolve into this, it really is a beautiful thing to see him writing such serious lyrics and being so heartfelt with this, with all of that. So I understand it. I totally understand people that get it. I love it. I love seeing people connect with songs like that. It's fantastic. Not for me personally.
My whole thing is, though, that lyric for that song is the parable without the story. I want the story. I want to listen to something 50 times the lyric and still be like, oh wow, I never realized that before. That's my, just as coming from being a writer, to me, that's my big hang up with stuff. You're
also
like
right. Like I'm a Deadhead too, and like I think that's something the Grateful Dead, like Robert Hunter, they were like, they excelled at in a way that's, if you have that background, like I do too, and I appreciate that, because I think that, like, Hunter, they were telling stories in a way that was so nuanced and so poetic, and I think that like Fish has never reached some of those depths lyrically, but
that's also not the point. Also, like, when Tom's writing lyrics for songs, he's not writing smegma, dogmatogram, fish market stew with the intention that it has some deep emotional meaning.
Right, because we want to just also, sometimes we just want to rock, and we just want to like get down and dance and be funky, and that's why Fish is so different from the Grateful Dead, and also like my generation's music and what I've connected with the most deeply, because like Fish is much more my soul in that way, because it is about having fun. So
hopefully not my soul, but
we won't sing that song because we know you don't like it, Brian.
But I had a dream last night that they played that in the middle of the second set tonight, and everybody was not happy. So hopefully,
it's not a good dream, Ryan. Don't have those dreams. Control those dreams. This discussion, I think, is really fascinating. I want to just really quickly pause and thank everyone for having a spirited discussion about disagreements around very nuanced aspects of music, which doesn't often happen. I think the middle ground thought that I have, because I agree with both sides on this, which I know that is the phrase we try to stay away from as much as possible in this world. So I understand, but here's my thought, just to offer a slight middle ground, because I think Trey from a lyrical standpoint, there's been such incredible evolution, and saying things like what he says in in Drift While You're Sleeping, love will carry us through. It's a platitude in a lot of cases. It's a Hallmark card in a lot of cases, but it's also true. And it's also like, if the way that Trey has approached recovery and life, over the last 15 years, those types of phrases, like those statements of truth, you have to say it and put it into existence to actually live it. And in some cases it can come across, apologies for the use of this phrase throughout this podcast, but it can come across really cheesy and very earnest. But at the end of the day, like, if you say it and you act upon it, it's a very powerful thing. So I think in one sense, like, him saying it there, I totally agree with you, Megan. There's a ton of courage there. I think, Kevin, to your point, Drift While You're Sleeping is one of those songs that works really well in the context of Ghost of the Forest, where it's placed, how it sets up the rest of the story, how it sets up, what we're looking for from that overall story of experiencing a close friend of yours dying and trying to come to this acceptance that love will carry us through, because I'll see you on the other side. At some point, we're all going to be reunited if you believe in this idea of an afterlife. And there's so much of that like Trey is speaking about. So I think one of the challenges with Drift While You're Sleeping is they've removed it from that story and said, hey, this is now a new second set closing encore compositional piece. And it's hard to throw that into the larger context of a Fish show, which is why I think you're absolutely right. You get the parable without the story. You just get the statement in that context. But if you listen to it in Ghost of the Forest, you're like, okay, I understand the larger context to this. So
definitely.
Yeah, and
that's my attempt at being a moderate in this conversation.
No, that's great. That's great breakdown. That's really good.
Yeah. I think I'm also gonna, take the more moderate route, because I think, as most people know,
we haven't allowed the man whose podcast is born out of these lyrics. He's had to listen to all of this for the last 10 minutes. Ryan, what do you have to say?
So also, this was my first time seeing Drift While You're Sleeping since I started the podcast.
Oh man,
and I was wearing really my cool. We Moved Through Stormy Weather shirt last night.
That's really
so I was
cool.
But putting Reba in that slot in the second set, I definitely, it was my first time seeing Reba live. So I was really excited, to finally be able to experience Reba live. I will say, I was hoping for something more along the lines of like a Piper in that slot. I think, allocating that 14, 15 minutes to a Piper jam would have been a better use, especially if you're going to close the set with something like Drift While You're Sleeping. Save Reba for a first set later in the run. But I think, despite how sloppy the composed section was, and I'm pretty sure I've heard worse from them, in the last 5 or 6 years. But I was actually shocked at how much Paige flubbed, which doesn't usually happen. But they really redeemed themselves during the jam. It was like, it seemed much more patient than they take it, or they have, again, a lot in recent years. More incredible Rhodes work from Paige on this jam. Just so beautiful. Trey just soaring. And, at the end, like, I think a lot of people noticed, Trey looked to Fishman to cue the ending, but Fishman missed the cue. But luckily, like, it didn't throw them off at all. Trey just went around again and just kept soloing. So I'm glad that didn't trip them up, and we got a little bit extra of that. Drift While You're Sleeping, I think, works a lot better as a first set closer. Second set closer, I think something like Antelope, or like a Bowie, you're looking for something with a little more meat to it. Where songs like Character Zero, Julia, stuff like that are better first set. I think the beginning of Drift While You're Sleeping definitely kind of sucked some of the energy out of the room, but I think at the end, when they hit the final, We Moved Through Stormy Weather stuff in the peak, looking down from the Chase Bridge at everyone, it looked like the majority of people were like dancing, getting into it, having a great time. It's something like when they play More. People have their problems with the song, or like Everything's Right or something. People are like, oh, the lyrics are cheesy, whatever. But at the end of the day, when they're like getting to that rocking ending, people are singing it along, like, and it's great to see. It's a high energy moment, and you can tell like the band's loving it. Trey, big smile, like, you know, all of it. And for the encore, again, another one of those moments during Gumbo, which, first of all, I love the song.
So
My
much.
first time seeing it live. That's one of the few songs also that they haven't brought back the jams from. You know, they've brought back like Haley's, whatever. Haley's, I always mispronounce it. But Gumbo, you know, it seemed Paige was moving over to the whirly and the synth a little bit when they started jamming, but Trey was kind of having none of it, and cued him for his piano solo, which I was a little bit sad about.
Put him in his place
like,
right there.
Yeah. Oh, Paige was like moving over to the synth and everything, and then Trey was just like, and piano solo, and
He just stopped playing and said, "Look at the time, guys. We gotta go. We got late night reservation for sushi after this. We got to get out of here. Come on."
And then, you know, Slave, again, a little bit of a disconnect on some of the composed part. I think they hit the ending a little bit off, but, you know, it was Slave, and I'm not going to complain about seeing a Slave encore. It was still beautiful and a great way to end the show.
Yeah, I was thinking about with Slave that I just pulled up the stats on Fishnet. 3 versions to close out 2021. The 1016, 1023, and 1231 were all in the first set, and it was it's a very rare song to be in the first set. Prior to that, the last first set version was the very strange show opening version from Dick's 2016, and before that, we're talking about 2012 was the last time that it was played in the first set, before 2016. So we got these last 2 versions last night, as well as 226 were encore slots. You know, a song that we have a great comment here. No slot rules. This is what Slave did, and that what Fish did so well throughout 2021. There were no rules about like this song should be in quotes here, but no, we're just going to throw it here. That blissful, reflective vibe that you get from a Slave jam usually comes in the encore, like it did last night, where you're like, oh man, what a night, what an experience. Cannot wait to come back again tomorrow. You would get that in the middle of the first set. It's really cool to see a song like that come back to this spot where that reflection, you know, even again, I'm on my back patio, hanging out outside, listening to this show, and I'm still getting that vibe of like, all right, that was a great night. We're leaving, and now we're going to come back again. So I thought, yes, Gumbo, you know, take it to another level, make it a 9-10 minute version, jam it a bit. But to have Gumbo be this kind of a random call in the encore, followed by a very traditional encore slot, I thought it was a good closing to the first night of the MSG 2022 run. Some people are calling it the 2021 run. I'm calling it the 2022 run. It is April 2022, guys. The Knicks are out of the playoffs.
You can take your pick with merch too. You can buy the December merch for the April merch.
I just have to say too that my friend and I actually manifested that Gumbo, because I was at the show last night with a friend, and she played me sometime over quarantine. She came to my house, and we were so sad about missing shows, and she reminded me about the Boise 99 Gumbo, and we played it on my deck and just danced so hard, and we were just like, oh, like Gumbo, like this song can just hit so deep. And when Fishman came out just swinging in the show, I was like, we're gonna get a Gumbo, because like we're gonna hear those big bass drops from him, those big just booms, and I was so happy. So when they encore with that, we just looked at each other and we were like, this is for us. So maybe not the best version, but I'll take it. And honestly, ending a show with Slave, like, it's beautiful. And I think they played one in 2019 too, and it's just, there's nothing like hearing a Slave ever, even if it's not perfect. It's beautiful.
Well, shout out to listener Neil Landry, who's had some great comments throughout the show. On the thread of set placement, Reba was only the second set to Reba since 2015. Lots of non-traditional, blissed out vibes on the back end of the show. I think that speaks to a lot of what we.
That's
it's cool.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I think it speaks to. He hosts. Shout out to Neil. I think that there's a lot to like what we've talked about over the last 90 minutes, which was last night was emotional. And it was an emotional show for the band. It was an emotional show for a lot of fans. And that's where you get some of the slop. but that's also where you get these really cool non-traditional moments of like the Reba bliss. 20 minutes later, the slave bliss. You know, earlier in this, like the first part of the show is all about adrenaline and energy, and you get that with Carini leading into a 19-minute jam. I want to go around rapid fire. Megan, jam of the night for you.
Down with Disease and Into the Howling. Just have to put that in there because that was the peak for me.
That's part of it. The Howling is part of it. Kevin, jam of the night for you.
I would go with the Carini Possum. That was a moment.
Travis, jam of the night for you.
I go with the Down with the Disease just because it got me where I wanted to get to, and I, got down hard for that one, so that was mine.
Ryan, how about you?
Down with Disease as well, and I'm predicting that tonight is Tweezer night. I'm making that call now.
Ooh,
it's 12:30.
It's 12:30.
12:30, always good.
It's coming, and they dropped Carini and Disease last night. Like
that's true.
Tweezer's coming.
Tweezer is coming. I think I'm going to go with Disease as well. Carini Possum, amazing call.
Yeah.
And that, like, man, I was just, when they started jamming, I just texted two of my friends who were there, and I was like, don't text me back, but holy shit, they're already jamming. And I didn't get a text for like 45 minutes because I think that they were just like, levitating at that point in time. But Kevin, Travis, Ryan, thank you all for joining us. This was an awesome conversation. I really appreciate it. Jonathan just chatted in with MoMA Jam. We got a stash.
Yes.
I mean, there were a lot of riches last night. Almost an embarrassment, I will say. And I think if you go and you make a playlist of the highlights of last night's show, you're talking about like an hour and 20 minutes worth of music, which is a really cool thing. But Kevin, Travis, Ryan, thank you guys for hanging out. You all three are welcome back at any time on HFPod. We love what you guys do on Wook Plus. We love what you do on we move through stormy weather. I'm so sorry. It's such a mouthful of a great podcast. It's an amazing show. Highly recommend it. And Ryan, thank you for your keyboard breakdown. You guys all enjoy your day. Get some rest. Get some food. Drink some water. I'm acting like your dad right now. I apologize.
Hydrate.
But,
I'm drinking
you know what? My dad's not here right now. So
I hope to meet all of you guys in person. I'll be at the Osiris happy hour today if you're going to come by.
I will.
Yes, you guys
I would
should
just like
all
to shout out Groove Safe also.
Yes.
Go visit her table. I will be at the Groove Safe table with Ashley tonight pre-show. So come say hi.
It's a great place to
Awesome.
go.
I'll try to come find you, Ryan.
And yes,
thanks for having
Moynihan
us. This was
in
awesome.
the train hall. That's where the Osiris pre-show hang will be today. So you guys all make your way over there. But yeah, have a great night tonight. Thank you guys.
Thank
this was
you for having
fun.
us.
Thanks,
awesome.
guys.
Really appreciate it. Nice seeing you guys.
Absolutely.
Have a great show.
Later. All right, Meg. Did we do it?
We did it. That was awesome.
That was fun.
That was really fun.
Any last thoughts as we move into night 2 of the run?
I don't think so. Just that I'm so excited. And it was nice to hear that so many people appreciated all of those great moments.
Yeah.
And I actually think that we should probably someday, Brian, do like a show where we compare each song to a type of cheese.
I'm into it.
Okay.
That's going to require a lot of taste testing, but I'm very into it.
Exactly.
So we will be
great.
We will be back tomorrow at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, to break down tonight's show, 421 MSG Night 2. We are going to be welcoming Lucy Montgomery, who is on Twitter at Lucy Montgomery, as well as someone who I've been wanting to talk to for literally years, and I am really excited to have on, which is Mike Lowe, who is on Twitter at Mike Lowe TPT. I think I have that right. There also may be a guest appearance by one Mr. David Goldstein. We're still trying to figure out if that is going to work out. My former co-host from Beyond the Pond, as well as The Drop, who is seeing his first Fish shows since MSG 2019 right now. So he is on cloud 19, just like you, Megan. So it'll be a packed show. We got a lot of people coming on. At some point, RJ is going to come through. I'm hoping at some point Jonathan's going to come through. We got a lot of Osiris people at these shows that we want to get their perspective on. But we'll be back tomorrow, Friday, April 22nd, to break down tonight's show. Meg, do you want to tell us before we leave about our sponsor?
Absolutely. Sunset Lake CBD is a majority employee-owned hemp farm. They're located just outside of Burlington, Vermont. And for years, Sunset Lake was a dairy farm. They produced milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And in 2019, they diversified and they started growing hemp for CBD. So Sunset Lake CBD embraces Vermont's tradition for land stewardship by using sustainable and regenerative farming techniques. They build and protect healthy soils. They're 100% pesticide-free, use minimal tillage, and they implement cover crops and crop rotations. As if that wasn't enough, they also serve as a research farm for the University of Vermont's agronomists to study hemp and inform best industry practices. I will be relying on CBD heavily to get me through this very long, torturous weekend of fish. So I'll be eating CBD gummies to fall asleep, maybe taking some tincture, maybe smoking some flower to relax. So I would encourage everyone to check them out today at sunsetlakecbd.com. And you can use the coupon code HFPod. You get 20% off your whole entire order, and it will come really fast too. They have amazingly quick shipping. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer owned, Vermont grown.
And I also want to tell you about our other sponsor for today, Cash or Trade, the only secondary ticketing market where fans buy, sell, and trade tickets at face value. You're able to DM each other before, during, and after a transaction and rate and review each other when the transaction is complete. So you know that you're working with a good, honest person. No added fees to sell your tickets, and all sales are fully protected by Cash or Trade's trader protection policy, which guarantees your money back. Users can avoid purchase fees with a gold membership subscription. Visit Cash or Trade to learn more. And with that, we are going to bid you all farewell. Meg, how are you getting ready for tonight's show? I guess that's the last thing we should cover.
Well, there's been a lot of talk of a disco nap. Now, I am not a napper. I just have to tell you, I'm not a napper. My mind just races. I'm kind of a go, go, go person. But my girlfriends just are getting back to the room, and we're really going to try to do like a disco nap. We didn't get a lot of sleep. So that's our plan. But it'll probably be mildly successful. Look, Shayna's getting into bed right now.
She's getting ready. I fully support it. The last time I did a big run was in the fall, and I stayed up far too late and didn't take a nap before the forum show, and I paid for it. You don't want to lose momentum halfway through the show.
No, you got to stay rested. So that's my plan. And then I'm going to be at this Osiris happy hour. So I'm excited.
Wonderful. We'll say hi to all of our good friends and enjoy it. I will be watching the show from afar, and I will look forward to covering this with you again here tomorrow afternoon. Take care, everyone. Have a great night too.
Thanks, Brian. Bye, everybody.